Welcome back to the 2016-2017 NBA preview. Today we are covering the 21st ranked team, the Washington Wizards. My name is Josh, your Enviers, and with me today is my co-host.
How's it going, guys? King of the fourth quarter here, aka Jaree. Welcome back to the NBA preview.
So, the Washington Wizards. Very, very questionable team for the future, but before we talk about the future, let's take a look at what they did last season, because this team was a failure. Do you agree? They were supposed to make the playoffs. They didn't do that.
Yeah, they definitely underachieved for last year. The year before that, they were actually pretty good.
Yeah, they went from sweeping the Raptors and I believe making it to the second round, but just to lose to the Hawks.
Yeah, to not making it at all.
That's a big step back, and partially the reason why is because last season, Bradley Beal, apparently he's going to be on a minutes restriction for the remainder of his career, but that didn't stop the Wizards from signing him up to a 5-year max contract, essentially. Man, that's a big risk for the Washington Wizards to take, but hopefully they manage the minutes properly and Bradley Beal was able to play more than 55 games. He came off the bench. The majority of the 55 games he did start. Only started 35 games last season. Garrett Temple started over him, and I'm not really sure if that's because of the minutes restriction or the injury or the stress fracture. I'm assuming it's all of those combined. That's why he only came off, because this man is too talented of a scorer, especially with the talented young backcourt in Wall and Beal.
About halfway through the season, when they realized that things weren't really going their way, they decided to make a trade to pick up Markieff Morris. Sounded good in theory. They were just a little bit under that 8th seed at that point, but really just fell out once Markieff came. And then after that, they decided to get rid of Randy Whitman, and now they have Scott Brooks as their coach.
Yeah, the whole swing batter miss happened with this Washington Wizards team. I think they went full on, I'm going to sign Kevin Durant, but apparently Kevin Durant didn't even have the Wizards as a consideration. So this is what happens to the Wizards now that they do not have Kevin Durant. They ended up signing Bradley Beal to max, and this team does not look good for this season. So let's take a look at the offseason moves that the Washington Wizards made to try to improve from barely missing the playoffs last year. The offseason moves, they have acquired Trey Burke by trade from the Utah Jazz. They signed Ian Mahinmi, Jason Smith, Andrew Nicholson, and a lot of undrafted rookies are currently on the team. Majority will probably be cut. They lost Jared Dudley, who was a nice overall player. He's really going to be missed. Nene, JJ Hickson, Ramon Session, Garrett Temple, and a whole lot of other dudes that are going to be filling out this bench. And they drafted nobody, so the offseason looks kind of shaky for the Washington Wizards.
Definitely. It's really scary to me. If I was a Washington Wizards fan, it'd be scary just to think that Trey Burke is my backup point guard.
Ramon Sessions was really good.
Yeah, Ramon Sessions had what seems like a resurgence to his career when he was in Washington. They're hoping that Trey Burke can do the same thing, but I don't know, man. Just the way Trey Burke has played, I was really high on Trey Burke when he came out of college, but he's just too small. He's too small. He can't get into the paint. He can't penetrate, and it's just going to be tough. If something happens to John Wall, that team is really bad. They'd be lower, way lower.
They would, but we're hoping that John Wall and Bradley Beal are able to carry this team. Marcin Gortat, he's still a serviceable big, but if we take a look at the rotation now, this is their projected starting lineup. John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, Markieff Morris. They have a full season with him now. Marcin Gortat, and their bench looks like Trey Burke, Jarrell Eddy, Kelly Oubre, Andrew Nicholson, and Ian Mahinmi.
That's scary. That's scary.
That is.
But one thing I've seen a lot when I've talked to the two Washington Wizards fans that I know is they're really optimistic about Scott Brooks and his development. If you think about it, he kind of, I guess Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook were already players when they came into the league, but he got them to that next step. Same things with Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka wasn't as good as he is now when he came into the league, as pretty much for everybody, but a lot of his progression is credited to Scott Brooks. Same thing with James Harden. So it seems like Scott Brooks is really good with player progression or player development. And now they have a bunch of young players in Washington, and that's the way the fans have been talking to me, at least.
I might have to intervene on that. I'm not going to say Scott Brooks is a good coach. I mean, he's a complete upgrade from Randy Whitman, but he's not a great coach. You know,
right.
He's a very decent coach, and I'm not sure with the whole Thunder situation. I feel like James Harden and Russell Westbrook and KD, they would have already been those players with or without Scott Brooks. But it's going to be interesting to see how he coaches this Wizards team, because he may be one of the most overhyped coaches that I personally have seen.
He's definitely not great at the X's and O's. He's not great at drawing up those
This
plays.
man was starting Kendrick Perkins.
We've seen that with the Thunder. That is just offensive play calling is just not his thing.
But I mean, if he was starting Kendrick Perkins, maybe he could get some more out of Marcin Gortat, Ian Mahimi, and Jason Smith, because those they have like 2 starting caliber centers. Maybe, I mean, Jason Smith is a nice rotation player, but Ian Mahimi and Marcin Gortat, those are 2 starting caliber centers, and it feels kind of weird that they have both of those dudes. It feels like this team is like a trade away. This team looks like it needs to trade because they have a lot of bigs and not a lot of backcourt guys to back up Bradley Beal and John Wall.
The backcourt is really, really thin. Eddie seems like he can shoot the ball, but other than that, I wouldn't say he's a serviceable backup. I think there's still guys in the market that they can go target, but it doesn't seem like they're going to. So now they have Trey Burke and Jarnell Eddy as their backups. This
is a very, very young team. Young teams in the NBA can go one of 2 ways. They could either be really average or really bad, and that's why I feel like this is a safe bet to put them at 22 in this NBA preview, because young teams, they're always a tough thing to call.
And one thing that surprised me is that they went after Jason Smith and Andrew Nicholson, because those guys have really nice mid-range jumpers, but they won't really stretch the floor. I think they were trying to get a stretch forward to kind of come off that bench, but those 2 guys aren't great 3-point shooters. Nicholson actually had a pretty good 3-point shooting year last year, but that was only on like 100 attempts, so the data is kind of skewed a little bit. So it's kind of confusing because their spacing will still be off this season. John Wall, not great shooter. Bradley Beal is probably the best shooter in that lineup. Otto Porter still hasn't got there offensively or even as a player. So it's going to be tough for them, I think, scoring the ball. If it's not in transition. John Wall definitely has shown that transition game is his. But other than that, it's going to be tough for them.
The weight of the world is going to be on John Wall's shoulders next season. So let's take a look at the projections for this Washington Wizards team. The Washington Wizards went 41-41 last season. They went exactly 500, just missing the playoffs. Over under, where do you see this Washington Wizards team being this year?
I'm going to go under because the backups that they lost this offseason really is going to hurt the team. Like, they brought in some guys that I don't think is going to fill those roles. So I'm going to go under.
I'm going to have to agree with you there. This team, like I said earlier, feels like a trade away from acquiring a player to help them win 40 games. Because right now they do not look like they're going to be able to win 40 games no matter how hard John Wall does it. If this man is out for significant time, this team could be just like the Heat, where they're looking like a lot in trouble with injuries. So I'm going to say they're going to go win around 30, 35 games next season. But hopefully they prove me wrong, and hopefully John Wall is able to carry this team, because right now this is a very incomplete team, a very young team, and apparently ESPN has them being the 7th or 8th seed in the playoffs, which is absolutely crazy.
I hope for the Washington Wizards fans that Otto Porter actually steps up this season. He just hasn't lived up to his hype. When they draft him 2nd overall or 2nd or 3rd overall a couple years ago, and still hasn't got to the point where he's a legitimate option offensively. So I think next year, hopefully he can get to that spot. If he does, I can see them making the playoffs, but I don't think that's going to happen.
He is definitely not the Otto Porter when Paul Pierce was there in the playoffs. So with that said, this is where we see the Washington Wizards being this NBA season. If you agree with us, let us know in the comments section below. If you disagree, let us know as well. If you liked the video, enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like. All of our social medias are in the description for you guys to check out, and sharing this on any of your social media would greatly help out this series as well, considering we put a lot of time and effort into this, and along with making the transitions. So with that said, my name is Joshua Enviers.
It's King of the Fourth Quarter. Thank you guys so much for watching.
We'll talk to you guys in the next episode.